Hi, I'm Sharon Goldwasser. I've been a birder in Southern Arizona for over 40 years and just love going out to all the Tucson parks and natural areas because there's such a great diversity of birds, even right here in the city. And then once you go out a little bit further up in the mountains and down in the canyons, you can find some of the greatest bird diversity in the entire United States. All right, I'm going to give you a little introduction to getting started in birding today, how you can do it, what some of the equipment is, maybe a few places to go, and some of the things that you might see around Tucson at different times of the year. Birding is a rapidly growing hobby in the United States. It's been popular for a while and it's just been expanding, and it's one of those activities where you just get into it and you discover layers and layers and layers of interesting things, because wherever you go, there are new birds, new for you, new for the area, interesting things, colorful birds, the challenge of identifying sparrows. So it's a hobby that just continues to grow with you as you get involved in it. So just about anyone can birdwatch, because you don't have to be extremely physically fit. You can sit in one place and watch birds coming to a pond. You can look at birds in your backyard, or you can go into as rugged a place as you want wearing hiking boots. So there's everything that you might be interested in as far as your ability level. Birding is accessible to you. One thing that, like all outdoor activities in Arizona, you want to make sure that you always have enough water, in fact, more than you think that you need, and wear sunscreen, because you don't realize how long you've been out, and the sun's intensity in Arizona, as you probably know, is very, very strong. So those are really, really important. The most successful birding experience, the most diversity of birds, comes when you go to an area that has a lot of different habitat zones close together. Lowell Park is ideal for that because, as you can see, it has a water environment, it has the grassland, it has large trees, it has an edge with some desert vegetation so that birds can take cover if they come out into the open. And generally, the more types of habitat you visit, the greater diversity of bird life you're going to observe. So the one piece of equipment that you absolutely need is a pair of binoculars. You just can't see the details on the birds without that and appreciate both their beauty and go through identification. So when you go to buy a pair of binoculars, you need to know a couple things. On the binocular somewhere, it will say something like, in this case, 10 by 42. And what that means is these binoculars magnify 10 times what you're seeing, and that the lens is 42 millimeters across. And the larger that number is, the more light will let in and the bigger field of view. The disadvantage is, as you get larger and larger, the reason you don't want to have like 10 by 100 is that they get heavy. So some people find even the 10 power binoculars are too heavy for them to hold steady, and they'll go with a 7 or an 8. So that range of 7 to 10 power and usually 40 to 50 is going to give you a good utilitarian basic binocular. Now, there are some specialty situations where you might want something smaller. I happen to take my bicycle often, and I don't want to carry the heavy binoculars. And I have a second pair, and you can see these have a much smaller lens. And I think these are 8 by 30. I'd have to check. They might be 10 by 30. But they definitely don't have the field of view that the larger ones have. It's important, don't buy the very cheapest binoculars you can find, because they'll go out of alignment easily, and it's sort of like this, your eyes are looking in two different directions, and you'll get a headache and you won't be able to focus. So go for something, that you can afford, but try not to buy the cheapest thing, because you'll end up being unhappy and having to replace them. So one other piece of equipment that a lot of birders find essential, and I've recently acquired one, is a camera. Now, you'll see a lot of people with very large, expensive lenses. They're heavy. That's not a required piece of equipment. And the camera isn't, but this type of camera, bridge camera, is really great for documenting your sightings and having some memories to take home. It has a lens that extends and has a combination of optical magnification and digital magnification that gets it up to be the equivalent, in my case, of over a 600 millimeter lens. And so you can capture birds that are a distance away. It's just a nice thing. It's not required, but I'm certainly enjoying it these days. What should you wear birding? Really, there's no special clothes. A lot of people do prefer lightweight, loose-fitting clothes, sometimes with an SPF rating. You don't have to wear that. You can go out in whatever you're comfortable in. Some people wear shorts, although if you do, you have to worry about biting insects, snakes, chiggers in the summer. So there's advantages to wearing long sleeves and long pants in certain habitats and certain seasons. But really, there's no special clothing. You probably want to avoid bright colors because that will sometimes attract bees and sometimes scare off birds. Now, one exception to that is if you have a little red on, sometimes you'll attract a hummingbird because birds have very good vision, and hummingbirds are keyed into red because a lot of their food source flowers are red. So one other little pointer, wherever you're walking outside, you might avoid wearing anything that has a scent to it because bees are attracted to scent, and since all of the bees that you're going to encounter in Arizona now are the Africanized bees and are very aggressive, you really don't want anything that's going to increase your chance of an encounter with them that could be dangerous. Okay, so bird identification is one of the first skills that you need to work on, and it's great to start with some of the common birds that you might see around Tucson in a lot of habitats. For example, this cactus wren could be found out in the open desert, but in a lot of neighborhoods. And with a bird like that, you'd be looking at the size, which is, it's a medium-large songbird, has a really distinctive eyebrow and a lot of barring on it, found often in a cactus, and a very distinctive call. Sounds like a car that won't start, kind of goes rah, 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 rah. So sounds are really important. Another super common bird in all of our Tucson parks, you might not see it in your neighborhood, but the vermilion flycatcher is schoolyards and parks. It loves open areas. The male's unmistakable. The female's exactly the same shape, but a duller brown on the back and just a little bit of a pinkish wash underneath and sometimes some streaking. So one of the pitfalls is you can't assume that birds will look the same, male and female, and all year round. So that's a skill that you acquire as you bird. This is one of the most common hawks in the Tucson area now. They used to be rare, the Cooper's hawk, but most of the hawks you might see in a park or your neighborhood, if you see sort of a slender, medium-sized hawk, would be this Cooper's hawk. They're a bird specialist. They've really been growing in abundance in Tucson. And then the ladder-backed woodpecker and also the Gila woodpecker are really common birds that you would see anywhere where there's large trees. So you can identify them by their posture vertically on a tree trunk or a branch, and their toes that point up and two down. So as you get more experience with birds, you're going to try to move from just identifying the bird you see on the ground or in the tree to maybe one you get a glimpse of or in flight. So an example of that is the woodpeckers have this flight pattern that's kind of drips down and dips down again, which most of our other birds don't do. So when you see a medium-sized bird with that flight pattern, that might clue you in that it's a woodpecker. So where are you going to find all this knowledge? Because obviously you have to get it somewhere. In addition to going out with a knowledgeable birder, there are a number of excellent field guides out there. I started long ago with the Peterson Field Guide and the Golden Field Guide, but they've been surpassed, I would say, by some of the more current field guides, the National Geographic Guide, and many people prefer the Sibley Guide. So those books will give you range maps. They will give you what to look for as far as specific identification features for how to tell two similar species apart. They'll describe the song and the habitat. So you really need to have a field guide to get started. So sometimes when you're just getting started in birding, you might want to go someplace where you can just sit and watch birds for a while and study them. Or maybe you're just not as active and you don't want to be hiking all over a trail or a park. So a pond like this one is great because it has large birds that you can study, like some of the ducks, especially in the wintertime, and many other birds will come down to get a drink or take a bath at the edge of the pond. So it affords a really great viewing opportunity. A second advantage is if you have a family with young children, nature is a wonderful opportunity to bond with them, and kids love nature. And coming to a pond and looking at the ducks, that can be one of the greatest experiences to get them started in being aware of their environment. This is the end of October. The ducks are just starting to come in, and as I'm looking across here, there are some domestic ducks that people have released. They're not supposed to, but they seem happy here. And then we have mallards. The males have a nice glossy green head and the females are more dull. And then a slightly smaller species of duck, the American widgeon, which has a yellowish stripe on the forehead in the male and a green sort of face patch that goes through the eye. And sometimes we get some other ducks here as well, but that's what I'm seeing today. And as I'm watching over the pond, I saw a hummingbird fly catching. They do that to supplement their nectar diet or when nectar's not available. And we just saw a little migrant black-throated gray warbler in the mesquite and some vermilion flycatchers behind us, and that's just in 5 minutes. So we're going to wrap up this little introduction to birding today. I hope you found it informative. Before we go, I want to mention there are quite a few other parks that provide great birding in the Tucson area. Reed Park is excellent, has a lot of open water, and surprisingly, areas like the Rose Garden and the big trees there are great. Himmel Park has had some good sparrows lately. All the park areas along the bike path on the Rito and the Pantano and the Santa Cruz, those all provide some really interesting birding. So just by staying within the Tucson Parks and Recreation area, you can find quite a wide diversity of birds at different seasons. This is Sharon Goldwasser about to sign off. I hope I see you out there birding, exploring the amazing world of birds that you can see in the Tucson area.